Welcome back to Homesteading with the Zimmermans, where we work hard and play hard on our little corner of land in Iowa. My husband and I were born and raised Old Order Mennonite, or horse and buggy Mennonite, as some refer to them as. And although we are no longer part of that culture or community, we are intentional about passing on the old-fashioned skills of our childhood to the next generation. Hello friends, welcome back. Ruth Ann Zimmerman here for Homesteading with the Zimmermans. And today's video, I'm going to update my pasta sauce video. I had done a pasta sauce YouTube video the very first summer that we started our YouTube channel. So I'm still using the same recipe. I am just going to update the video to bring it fresh because YouTube buries old videos that aren't getting watched. And it'll be easier for everybody to find it. So this is the second small batch of tomatoes that we have picked, and today is our very first heat advisory of the summer, even though it's almost September. And by the time I get this posted, it'll definitely be September. But the good thing, even though I'm going to be sweating buckets while I'm canning this pasta sauce, is we need these 90-degree days to ripen the rest of our tomatoes. So I could put these tomatoes in the freezer. A lot of people do that, and then they wait and do a large pasta sauce day or a large tomato processing day. But I know myself well enough to know that if I put those tomatoes in the freezer, they're going to be out of sight and out of mind, and I'm going to move on to different things this fall, and I'll never do them. I've done that in the past, thinking, oh, that's a really smart idea. I don't have to deal with these tomatoes today. I just put them in the freezer. But I'm not that type of person. And you've heard me say canning and preserving is not my first love. I just like to grow things. So I'm going to make a small batch of pasta sauce. I was away out of the house this morning, and I have to go teach PE this afternoon. So the goal is to get all our veggies processed and ready to cook down, and then I'm just going to put them in the slow cooker while I have to go teach PE and let it simmer that way. So I've got about an hour and a half to get that all done. So let's dive in. And remember, I will post the recipe description, link to the recipe in the description. And the flavors, the spices, the seasonings, those are all just the way we like it. You can change it up to be any way you like. I throw all my all my veggies in the blender and blend it all up. If you like a chunkier pasta sauce, just dice your veggies and cook them that way. Or dice at least your tomatoes and onions and cook those that way. But I just find it easier to blend it all in a high-powered blender. I am going to show you, if you don't have a high-powered blender, there is another way, and I'll show you when we get to that point. I'll show you what that tool is. But for now, I'm going to start. I'm just dripping sweat. For reference of how hot we feel when it's 90 degrees, is here in our climate, we get an average of 5 to 6 days over 90 degrees in a summer. And this is probably our second or third day over 90 degrees for the entire summer. So that's why we have a heat advisory, because we're not accustomed to temperatures over 90. So we're going to get started with washing these tomatoes. Okay, I've got my little setup here, and I've got tomatoes and cold water, and then I have this strainer. I'll try to find one to link for you. I thrifted this one, and when I core the tomatoes, I'm going to chop them in half, and then I'm just going to lay them in the strainer to get rid of any excess water, because I don't want any more water than I need. And so I've got two different types of tomatoes. I've got the Amish paste or the Roma tomatoes, And I really like to grow these for this reason. You don't have to core them or anything. and my tomatoes are all fairly small this year, and everybody in the area has been saying the same thing. So I don't even have to cut them, but I'm going to because it's easier on my blender. But my nice big tomatoes like this, I take the cores out and I just slice them a little bit. I make sure the skins are clean. Now if you have bought tomatoes that you didn't grow yourself, even if they're labeled organic, I would add some baking soda to my water because baking soda can neutralize pesticides and herbicides that might be on the skin of your tomato. It can't do anything for what's inside the tomato if it's been sprayed all of its life. But adding about 2 tablespoons of baking soda per 1 quart of water will help neutralize pesticides and herbicides on the skin of the tomato. So if I was working with bought tomatoes, I would wash them in the baking soda water, and then I would rinse them and start with fresh water and then proceed like I am here. So then when I've got my strainer full, I'm gonna throw them into my blender. So I tried this method with a cheaper Oster blender and I was not happy with the results because my cheaper blender did not blend the seeds and it just kind of rolled up some of the skins, and that meant there was pieces of skin in my pasta sauce, and the family did not like that as much. But it really showed up in the tomato juice. The pasta sauce wasn't too bad. But with my Vitamix, I only blend it for 20 to 30 seconds, and I'm very happy with the results after 20 to 30 seconds on high. And then I'm going to pour into my roaster. So I have, this is a 2-quart Vitamix pitcher. So every time I dump one in, I'm making a tally mark because I know me, I'll lose track of counting. And if I have a child here to help me, that's usually one of the younger children's job is to keep tally marks for me. But like usual, tomato processing starts after our schools start. So then I'm just going to keep doing that, blending, pouring into my roaster, and then at the end, I'll count together how many gallons of tomato puree I have, and then I'll adjust the rest of my recipe accordingly. And even though there's a heat advisory today, I am staying nice and cool. Number one, I'm in the shade and I've got cold water running over my hands, and I've got nice cool water dripping on my feet, and I'm staying hydrated by remembering to drink plenty of water. So our day did not get any cooler, surprise, surprise, but it did get busier. I had to go to school to teach PE class, which I knew about, but I thought I'd be further into my tomatoes before I have to go. But then because it's so hot, I had to keep taking water to some of our animals that don't have automatic waterers, and that took up a lot of time. So now I have my helpers at home, and Harrison is going to go get green peppers. For every 2.5 gallons of tomato juice, we need 4 green peppers. And I have about 10 gallons of tomato juice. So our recipe is times like 4.5. So we're just going to say it's times 4 or 5. So do you remember how many you need?
14.
16 or 18. Nice big green peppers. So the other thing that happened is the sun is further down in the sky, so I have to work in the sun now. but I'm going to be done in this area really soon, and then I will just be checking my pots. So Kendrick, what I need from you is, okay Kendrick, what I need from you is I need you to go in the garage and fill this bucket with all the best onions that are still on that table, okay? So I had kind of planned that I would be cooking down my pasta sauce in the slow cooker while I was at PE, but I didn't get that far. So now, instead of cooking it in the slow cooker, I am just going to put it in my pots, and we're gonna start that way because that'll be faster, and that way I can it all up and be done with it by the end of the day. And when I blend all my tomatoes and I measure it like that, I always figure a little less because it foams up so much in the blender, and then it measures more. So even though I measured about 10 gallons of tomato juice, I'm going to call it like between 8 and 10, and I'm going to err on the side of 8. How hot are you, Harrison? Come closer so I can see how sweaty you are. That's a lot of sweat.
Mom, what's this?
It's a baby pepper. Huh? Is it a baby pepper inside the pepper? Yep, that's right. And take the seeds out.
Whoa, this one's super big. Mom, look.
Watch your fingers, please.
Woo.
Here, let me show you. Go like this. If it's soft like that, you just throw it out right away. See how soft that one is? It's mushy. Okay, get me that purple one.
Medium.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so the first thing you do is you go like this. That one's good. Then you just cut them like this, and then peel the peels off. And put the ones that I want right here, okay? Just take all the papery peels off.
Okay, where should I put the papery peels?
In that schlop bucket.
Well, should I clean them out after? Or like...
I would just put them in every time you're done with one onion. I'll be coming to help you real soon.
No, don't help me, Mom. I want to do my job on my own.
Okay.
Mom, I work at a food factory here, so... Okay. You work at a food factory. Hey. Today, I'm making hot pizza sauce. I don't think these are hot, but they might be. Mom, are these peppers hot?
No.
Mom, what are we actually making today?
Pasta sauce.
We're making pasta sauce, which is basically pizza sauce. Mom?
Yeah.
So we're making pizza sauce.
So I know that I'll probably get some negative feedback on the boys using these big sharp knives, but at 8 and 9 years old, they have probably 4 and 5 years of practice on using knives under their belt already. They have always wanted to use pocket knives like Daddy, and so they have years of experience with using sharp knives, and I'm not very worried about them. I know some of you may be, but they are not your average 8 and 9 year old boys. like I said before, they've been practicing using sharp knives most of their life. And when I'm tempted to be worried or say, oh no, let's not use that knife, I remember that they have a healthy respect for sharp edges because, yes, how did they learn a healthy respect for sharp edges? They have cut their fingers. And guess what? We all lived. They have cut their fingers, and that is how they learned. And the very worst that could happen with them chopping these peppers and onions by themselves with my best kitchen knives is that they'll cut their fingers again, and just like the last time they cut their fingers, we'll put a band-aid on it and we'll call it a lesson learned. Worst case scenario, they will need stitches, and we know where to go for that. We know how to do it ourselves. That is my reasoning for allowing them to help me with sharp knives. So because any possible injuries that they could get while using the knives here on the table will not be life-threatening, we're going to allow them to take a small risk in order to gain life skills and experience. So then I'm just going to do the same for the onions and peppers. I'm going to wash them, throw them in the blender. So then, because this mixture is so dry, I just get some tomato juice from the pot and add that to it to help it blend. Okay, so the original recipe does not ask for fresh garlic. It asks for garlic powder, but I'm going to use fresh garlic, and I'm going to use about, let me see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've got 12 very large. Where's my little knife? Did somebody take my little knife?
I saw it. That's what it said.
Yeah. So I've got 12 very large pieces of garlic. So I am going to, Hadassah, you want to press this garlic for me into the cast iron? Oh, you're doing the basil. Okay.
I can't make any out of them. They're all none. Like they're all not.
That's okay. Even if they're not round, we can still use.
We're trying to select just like the barely size.
You can use that strainer, Hadassah.
If there was something like this size, big enough.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're only collecting the really big ones. Yep.
So I know the garlic doesn't have to be peeled, but some of my pieces are so big.
Mom, I'm gonna go get ice and dump it in there. Like 2 pieces.
So I've got 4 to 5 recipes of pasta sauce, and I've got 12. So I do like between 3 and 4 cloves of garlic per recipe. And the boys have decided we're having onion rings for supper, I guess.
Yeah. Now I got the smooth layer. Now I just have to cut it thinly and make the round circle.
If I were you, I wouldn't cut it too thin. Otherwise,
Yeah.
watch your
Otherwise-
fingers, Kendrick.
That's on the chef. I know how to do this.
So Hadassah got a bunch of basil, and she's chopping that up real fine.
Yeah, that might. These are the that's Maxwell.
The little stems are okay, just not the big ones. Yeah, get the little leaves off of that one. Okay, I've got all my garlic in the pan. I'm gonna add enough of olive oil to saute this. So there's been many years where I just added garlic powder to my pasta sauce because that was what was easiest and most available to me. But I'm kind of in a stage where there's not always little ones at my feet, and I can spend a little more time with making things the way I dream of making them because I'm not always pressed for time and attention. So we're just going to saute this garlic a little bit. Okay, thanks. To get the flavor out of it. And then we're going to divide this garlic evenly between the 2 pots of pasta sauce. So I'm just going to saute it until it's fragrant, not until it turns brown. Hadassah, can you run get me 2 hot pads real quick? What's the matter? So, okay, you can scrape, divide it up. So I always go a little light on the olive oil. Okay, and then we need sugar and salt. So I'm going to say I have about 4 recipes in each pot. That means about 2 cups of salt in each pot, but I'm going to go light on the salt and do 1.5 cups in each pot until I've tasted it. So each recipe calls for 1 cup of sugar, but you can definitely sweeten it to your taste. So we're going to start with that, and we're going to taste test it along the way. I know how my family likes their pasta sauce. Okay, I'm going to add some bay leaves to each pot, and these I'll remove as I can them. And then this is Italian seasoning, and I'll have measurements for you in the recipe in the description. But I have made this same recipe for probably 20 years now. So I just adjust it to how we like to taste our pasta sauce. So that was oregano and Italian seasoning. And at this point, don't get too excited if it doesn't taste like you think it should, because the flavors, as you cook it together, the flavors will really, really come alive. And I apologize, I really, really am drowning in my own sweat. But that sun is just about to go behind those cedar trees, and then it'll be a lot cooler right here. But also, this is how I get myself into trouble in the summer, because I really, really thrive with the warm weather. I don't hate sweating. This actually, although it's hot, as long as I keep moving, I'm comfortable. But I usually pay for it then the next day. And I get heat exhaustion. So now you have 2 options. You can just simmer this all day long until it's as thick as you like. Or you can add some tomato paste and help it along. So I've done it both ways. And please don't mind my ugly can. I have a terrible can opener, and because we use very little tin can food, I never think about it. So I'm going to add about half a gallon to each of my big pots here, and my one pot's slightly smaller than the other one, so I'm going to add a little less to this one. And that will help this thicken a lot faster. Now, if it were morning and I got this started right away in the morning, I would just let it simmer all day long until it's as thick as I like. So the sun has finally dipped down behind our trees, so now I'm in the shade and I don't have to wipe sweat out of my eyes so much anymore. But when you add your tomato paste, you only have to cook it for maybe 1 to 2 hours before it's thick enough. The more tomato paste you add, the shorter your cook time is going to be. Like I said earlier, I've made this without adding the tomato paste and just cooked it longer and still had a nice thick pasta sauce. So one of the questions that I get often is, did I do this amount of canning when I had just little babies? Like when I had preschool and toddler age? And the answer, number one answer is no, because we didn't consume as much food as a family. And number two, here's how it worked. Because I didn't have as large of a garden, I had smaller batches. So I may have had like 1 pot of pasta sauce, and I worked on it all day while I had toddlers. Do you need something, Kendrick? So I was doing smaller batches, and I just worked on it slowly all day long. And then when we needed, when we did a large batch, we would go, when I say we, I would say my sisters and I. We would go to my brothers who raise produce. It's part of their livelihood. And we would get cheap boxes of canning tomatoes, and we would all work together. Like 2 or 3 moms and all our toddlers and babies. And then at the end of the day, we would divide up all the jars, and that's how we got large quantities done. But even when I wasn't canning enough so that we didn't have to buy any pasta sauce from the store, every can that I did get, every jar that I did get filled was 1 less jar that we had to buy at the grocery store. So just because you can't do all of your pasta sauce needs or all of your green bean needs, or just because you can't do all of it, doesn't mean that you can't do some of it. My babies would sit on the counter, and we just did what we had to do to get it done. Also, it's the way I watched my mother do. She, of course, by the time I came along, she was halfway through raising her family because I'm a middle child. But even when she had little ones, we did the same amount of canning. Where there's a will, there's a way, and you just go through your whole day doing the next right thing. And then, of course, as, let's say my oldest were 6 and 7, and the baby, was a couple month old, those 6 and 7-year-olds can be a great help. They can, rock the baby. They can push the baby in the stroller. They can buy you a lot of time. And it's just for a day. It's just for that canning day. It's not like that 6-year-old is going to now the rest of their life be in charge of the infant. They're just helping you out so you can fill those jars. Anyway, that's kind of the answer to that question. That's the long answer to that short question. The short answer is yes and no. Yes, I did canning when the children were younger, and no, I didn't do all of our needs. I just did whatever I could get done. And I remember one time specifically, that I got pregnant in the middle of the summer and had morning sickness through harvest season. And that fall, I sure didn't get a lot of pasta sauce canned or any of the other things. But still, every jar that we got done was one less we had to buy at the grocery store. So there's seasons. And if you're in the season with lots of littles, then use the season to just practice your small batches. But by the time you get to the point where you can do this, like where you can do 20, 40 quarts in a day and 100 quarts of pasta sauce or whatever you're canning in a season, it'll be like second nature, because you'll have made a single pot of pasta sauce, you know, how many years in a row. So don't think that waiting to start until your children are older is a good idea. You're going to be thankful for all the skills that you have accumulated when they are older, old enough to help, and old enough where you have more time and space and energy. You're going to be thankful that you worked on those skills while they were little. Okay, I think this is just about ready to dip into jars, and how you can tell is the olive oil gets more cooked in. Olive oil is not just floating on the top anymore. And it's nice and thick. See how it coats the spoon? Alright, I think we're going to turn these burners down a little bit so that I don't have to watch them as closely. And you know, you might be wondering why I didn't do this indoors, because we do have the air conditioner on, and the truth is because this stove is so much faster than my indoor stove. The new kitchen stoves, I have an electric one, they only get so hot, and then they, anyway, they have these safety regulations on, and they won't get hot enough to boil a large pot. It takes so long to bring a pot like this to boil. So this camp chef has been faithful in getting my large pots boiling, and I can can so much faster and so much more at a time using my camp chef. So that's why I'm out here sweating, because speed is my goal, not comfort. So now that we've got our jars filled, we're ready to water bath them. And because the product in my jar is hot, I'm using hot water in my pot. You always want the same temperature, or approximately the same temperature water as your jars, as the product. We're gonna water bath these for 10 minutes. Once they come to a rolling boil, we're gonna set our timer for 10 minutes. And then we're gonna remove them and start a new batch. And this part will go really fast because I don't have to dump this, because the product that's in my jars is already hot. I can just add a little bit of cold water and take the temperature down before I add my next batch of jars. Now, I show you something. When I first started noticing people showing canning videos on Instagram, I wondered why in the world they covered their jars completely with water. Because my mom and grandma taught me that if you cover your jars completely with water, you're gonna have more siphoning, and when you have siphoning, you have jars that won't seal because little particles of your product get stuck between the rim of your jar and the seal of your lid. So you'll never see me covering my jars completely with water, because I won't have as good of a seal rate if I do that. And I did a whole video about water bath canning and all the questions I get and how I can the way my mom and my grandma taught me. I will link that video in the description for you, so you can maybe get a lot more of your questions answered. But anyway, the boys and I are gonna go milk, and Hadassah is gonna babysit these jars, these water bath canners, and I will be back after milking to help her out. So after our milking was done and we had water bathed all of the jars, I humored the children and fried their onion rings that they had so diligently cut. I battered and fried their onion rings for them. There was just a couple of us at home. Elvin had to run some errands, so he took a couple children, and Mitchell was not at home, so it was just Hadassah and I and the little boys. And we fried up a bunch of onion rings, and that was our supper. Okay, real quick, because I completely forgot that I told you I would show you a different way if you don't have a high-powered blender. And then I forgot to film it, and then when I was editing, I remembered. So this is a food mill. I will link this for you, and they're fairly cheap, and you can use them for so many things. So before I had a high-powered blender, this was one of my favorite ways. This was just the way to make pasta sauce. So you'll cut your tomatoes in half if you have the little ones, and you'll cook them down until they start releasing their skins and they turn to mush. And then you'll ladle them into this, and you'll crank them through. You'll just crank it through. Now remember, you have to turn backwards. About every 5 forward turns, you have to take 1 backward turn. So for about every 5 forward turns, you have to take 1 backward turn, because this, you can see, this is a forward turn, and this is a backward turn, because for a backward turn, this scrapes all the peels off that have been packed down there into the bottom. So remember, because I've had people contact me and say, I have one like that, it doesn't work. That's why you have to turn it backwards every once in a while. You can use this for grapes, apples, pears, anything that you don't want to take the time to peel. You can cook it with the peels and seeds, and then just use this food mill and get them all out. Well, today is Friday, which means it's family dinner, and we have invited guests for this week's family dinner. And because tomatoes are in season, what we're having is spaghetti and meatballs, and I'm going to make some fresh pasta sauce, and I'm going to roast all my veggies first in the oven, because that brings up the sugar content a little bit, brings out the flavor. And the reason I don't normally do it this way when I'm canning my pasta sauce is because I'm too impatient to add this extra step, because I'd have to roast veggies for a whole day before I'd actually have enough to make like 30 and 40 quarts of pasta sauce. But for fresh pasta sauce, I'm definitely going to take the time to roast them. And especially because family dinner, I tried to make things a little special. So this is going to be a special pasta sauce. And I'm also going to make some Alfredo sauce. And Elvin's going to smoke the meatballs on his smoker, and he's going to smoke the chicken breasts on his smoker. So guests will have, they can either make chicken Alfredo, or spaghetti and meatballs. And then, if I get around to it, I'm also going to make some breadsticks. And one of the guests is bringing a salad. And I've got my pasta dough resting in the refrigerator. So one of my favorite reasons to roast my veggies is because it's kind of like making a beautiful bouquet. It's just so pretty. So I'm going to drizzle some olive oil on, and I'm actually going to drizzle some honey on it too, because we like our pasta sauce with just a bit of sugar to offset the acid of the tomatoes. But I'm thinking roasting it with honey would probably take away the need for sugar. So then I'm going to sprinkle salt. And I can always add more salt after I blend the veggies. I'm going to sprinkle on some black pepper as well. So pretty. So I roast them for 2 to 3 hours at 350 degrees, or until the onions start looking a little toasted over the top. And then I throw everything into my blender and blend it up fine. And don't forget to add that juice, because that is where a lot of your flavor is. Now, I didn't quite add all of the juice because I didn't want to make my pasta sauce too runny. And then you can still adjust the flavors. I'm going to add some Italian seasoning and some more oregano. And I'm just gonna put it in my crock pot and keep it on low until we're ready to serve. So we made the pasta this morning and let it dry until tonight. Elvin is smoking the meatballs that we made on his smoker. And to boil the pasta today, I'm just using salted water. I have a little bit of saffron in the water, but normally when I make pasta for the family, I will cook it in some chicken broth. So our guests have arrived. They brought garlic bread and salad, and we have prepared some Alfredo sauce, and Elvin has grilled some chicken breast, and the meatballs look delicious, and there is our fresh pasta sauce and our pasta.
Try some of that sauce.
Mommy likes your sauce.
Grab your waters.
It's delicious. Winston does.
Okay. Oh yeah. I love watching his brain.
I didn't watch it. I would put it in the pot. Got it? We had to start dating at our wedding, right? Or no, you had been together a little.
Yeah, like big sticks.
That's not. Stop dribbling. Dude, stop. Like, no